We all want to be fluent in English, but how? Today, we will explore some effective techniques that will help you become more confident and comfortable in English. So, watch the video till the end and learn how to improve your English skills. English fluency is a wish of most people. I remember when I was a young student. Like you, I wanted to speak English fluently. I wanted to be fluent, but was shy, and I made plenty of mistakes. One day, my teacher said to me, "You can be fluent if you practice daily." Those words transformed my life. If you desire anything, you must work for it. Fluency is not in a day. It is as if sowing a tree. You put in the seed on the ground, water it, and you give it sunlight. Day after day, you tend to it, and suddenly, one morning, the tree becomes huge and healthy. So too, fluency. One day, a student came to me. She was so upset. She said, "Teacher, I want to speak English, but I always forget words." I smiled and said, "Do not worry. Fluency has nothing to do with remembering all the words. It is practice." She looked at me hopefully. "But how can I practice?" she asked. I said, "Practice is everywhere. You practice by talking with your friends, by listening to stories, by singing. You practice at each point of the day." I remember when I was at school. I used to love stories. I would listen to them every night. My teacher would read to me, and I would repeat words. Initially, I would do it slowly, but gradually, I could do it faster. I learned new words, and I gained confidence. A student asked me, "Teacher, is fluency speaking fast?" I said to him, "No. Fluency is speaking clearly. It is speaking so others can hear you. You don't have to speak fast. You have to speak confidently." There was one boy in my class who always spoke so rapidly. No one could comprehend what he was speaking. I told him, "Speak slowly, speak clearly, speak short words." He did, and everyone was able to comprehend what he was saying. He felt confident and enjoyed speaking English. Fluency is a journey. You take one step at a time. You do not rush. You like doing it. Someday, you look back and appreciate how far you have come. I have seen many students who were afraid to speak when they first came, but with time and practice, they were fluent. There is a trick to being fluent. It is an extremely simple trick. The trick is listening. Listen to individuals speak English. Listen to talks. Listen to music. Listen to individuals speaking. The more you listen, the more you learn. I knew once a girl who was mad about music. She would listen daily to English music. Slowly, she started singing along. She became more fluent because she was listening and copying. Another important thing is not to be fearful of mistakes. Mistakes are our best educators. I remember one of my students who was highly afraid of mistakes. She would not speak because she thought people would laugh at her. I told her, "Do not fear mistakes. All mistakes are learning experiences." She decided one day to speak up in class. She made a lot of mistakes, but she did not quit. She kept speaking. She eventually got better. She told me, "Teacher, I am not afraid anymore." That was the start of her fluency. Fluency is not merely speaking, but thinking in English too. If you think in English, you start to speak more naturally. I had one student who was constantly translating from his native language into English. It slowed him up and confused him. I told him, "Try to think in English. Even when you are by yourself, think in English." He worked on it, and eventually he gained more speed. There was one student who enjoyed talking a lot. He talked about anything and everything, but he had one problem. He would start off a sentence in English and switch back to his own language. I told him, attempt to stay in English. If you don't know a word, attempt to explain it in English. This kept him focused, and before long, he was speaking whole sentences in English. Reading is another way to get fluency. When you read, you see how a sentence is structured. You are learning new words. I remember when I was learning English, I used to read simple books. If I learned a new word, I would write it down, then try to use it in a sentence. This made me remember the words and how to use them while speaking. There was one student who came up to me with a book. She said, "Teacher, I have read this book, but I did not understand everything." I told her, that is okay. The more you read, the better you will get at it. She continued to read every day. Sometime later, she came to me and said, "Now I understand much more." Her fluency improved because she was reading and learning things every day. Listening to yourself is fluency too. Sometimes you have to record yourself talking, then listen to it. Check where you can improve. I had a student who did this every day. She would read a story onto tape and then listen and see where she could improve. This exercise sensitized her to her speech, and in no time at all, she was fluent. Practicing with a friend is also an excellent idea for fluency. I had two students who were friends. They both decided to communicate in English only with each other on a daily basis. They would talk in English, and whenever they found words that they were unfamiliar with, they assisted each other. Both of them became extremely fluent over time. They learned from one another and had fun. Fluency also results from applying the language to real-life contexts. When you are at the market, attempt to use English. When you are with your friends, try to use English. The more you use it, the more fluent you become. I had one student who was working in a store. He decided to use only English with his customers. At first, it was difficult, but after a while, he became more confident and fluent. Fluency also means being curious. When you hear a new word, do not give it the cold shoulder. Discover what it means and attempt to use it in your next conversation. I recall one student who was very inquisitive. Each time he heard a new word, he would inquire about its meaning. Then he would drill with that word as frequently as he could. His vocabulary improved, and so did his fluency. You also need to have a goal. Ask yourself, why do I want to be fluent in English? Having a goal makes you more motivated. I had one student who wanted to go on a journey to an English-speaking country. That was her goal. She practiced speaking English every day since she did not want to be caught off guard on her trip. Her objective kept her motivated, and she became fluent when she departed. I also encourage my students to have fun with it. Fluency is not something that will happen overnight. It will take time, but if you have fun with the process, then it will be less stressful. I had one student who loved watching English movies. He used to see one film every night. At first, he saw films with subtitles, but later on, he saw them without subtitles. He enjoyed the films, and at the same time, he was improving his fluency. Fluency is repetition. The more you repeat, the better you are. I had a student who loved repeating sentences. He would listen to something in class and then repeat it repeatedly. This made him memorize the sentences, and soon, he was using them in his day-to-day speech. Conversing with different people also enhances fluency. Different people speak differently. When you converse with different people, you pick up different ways of speaking. I once had a student who was shy. He used to talk only to me. I motivated him to talk to other students. Initially, he was shy, but with time, he grew more confident. He acquired new means of communicating, and his fluency grew. Occasionally, it is okay to practice speaking on things you enjoy. When you talk about something you enjoy, you are more passionate, and the words come more easily. I once had a student who loved football. He would talk about football with me every day. This made him more fluent since he was talking about something he cared about. Fluency also arises from the awareness that it's okay not knowing everything. You won't always know a word, and that is okay. You can clarify it differently. I had one student who would never leave something to an implied word. If he did not know the word, he would shut down. I told him, if you do not know the word, try to tell me what it is. This permitted him to keep going even when he did not know the exact word. One of the students asked me once, "Teacher, how long is it until I am fluent?" I told him, it depends on how much you practice. Some people become fluent in a few months. For some, it takes longer. But the main thing is to keep going. Don't give up. This student practiced every day and finally saw improvement. Sometimes, it is helpful to practice before a mirror. When you catch yourself speaking, you notice your expressions and body language more. I once had a withdrawn student. She did not enjoy public speaking. I encouraged her to speak in front of the mirror. This encouraged her more, and soon she spoke more naturally. Another student asked me, "Teacher, what do I do if I forget a word while speaking?" I replied to him, "Do not hesitate. Go on speaking. Sometimes the word occurs to you later. If not, substitute another word." This encouraged him to speak calmly, and he did not fear forgetting words. It is also important to take breaks. Your brain sometimes needs a break. After a long day of practice, it is pleasant to relax. I had a student who practiced all the time. She became very tired and started getting frustrated. I told her, "Take a break, relax, come back tomorrow with a fresh mind." After taking breaks, she felt better, and her fluency continued to improve. Fluency is also using the language in creative ways. You can compose a short story, sing a song, or even create a video. I had a student who loved writing. She used to compose short stories in English every day. This assisted her in getting better in new sentences and words. Shortly, she started reading aloud from her stories, and fluency improved for her. The second way to practice is to teach others. You learn even more when you teach. I had one girl who was exceptionally fluent. She wished to help her less fluently speaking friends. She taught them new words and chatted with them. Not only did this help her friends, but it made her more fluent too. Having a routine works sometimes. Set an English-speaking practice time each day. I once had a student who practiced 30 minutes each day. This was his routine. He practiced every day, and soon he became more fluent. A routine helps you remain disciplined and ensures that you practice regularly. You also need to be patient with yourself. Fluency is not an easy thing. I once had a very impatient student. He wanted to be fluent in no time, but when he did not see any improvements, he got frustrated. I told him, "Wait patiently. You are making slow progress." He listened to me and continued practicing. With time, he observed change and became more confident. Not all speaking fluently involves speaking alone. There's listening carefully. When you do is obtaining the method in which you're supposed to react. I had one of my students as a good listener. He heard first, then listened to what he said. As a result, He became simple and reflective. Listening plays a big role when it comes to fluency. The second most important aspect is to be positive. Learning is hard, but being positive makes it a heck of a lot simpler. I once had a student who was always positive. Even when she did things incorrectly, she would smile and try again. That positive state of mind kept her going and eventually made her fluent. Being open to experiencing new things is also what fluency is all about. Occasionally, you must step out of your comfort zone. I had a student who was comfortable in class, but reserved outside of class. I encouraged her to converse with people outside of school. She was hesitant at first, but then she became more confident and more fluent. It is also helpful to study from others who are fluent. Notice how they speak. Listen to their voice tone and absorb the mannerism in which they speak. I had a student who enjoyed hearing an English celebrity. She watched his videos and tried to copy his mannerism. This improved her own fluency. Fluency is comprised of numerous variables: patience, listening, speaking, and even making mistakes. All are important. I used to say to my students, cooking a meal is like fluency. You need different ingredients and you need to mix them well. This made them understand that every bit of learning is important. It is important to celebrate small victories. Every time you learn a word or talk confidently, applaud it. I had a student who would celebrate every small victory. This made her feel proud and urged her to keep going. Rewarding small achievements makes you observe your progress and stay motivated. Once, a student asked me, "Teacher, what if I get stuck while speaking?" I told him it is okay to pause and think. Take deep breaths and then go ahead. This advice kept him relaxed. When he got stuck while speaking, he mastered his pauses and he improved on fluency. Practicing what you have learned is also fluency. If today you learned a new word, use it tomorrow. I had one student who would learn one new word a day and would use the word in a sentence. This was his daily routine, and it helped him memorize the words and naturally use them when speaking. Another important aspect is to grab things from where you are. Sometimes you can pick up English from signs, posts, posters, and even menus. Once, I had a student who liked city sightseeing. Whenever he saw an English sign, he would analyze it and attempt to decipher it. This helped him learn new sentences and words that he could utilize when talking. It also helps to have an interest in the culture behind the language. English is spoken in many different countries, and each country has its own flavor of speaking it. I had a student who was specifically interested in British English. He would look at British TV shows and observe their culture. This taught him other modes of speaking and rendered him more fluent. Fluency is not merely a question of words. It also entails body language. When you speak, body language attaches meaning to what you are saying. I had one student who was very proficient at body language. He was short on sentences, but his body language made him sound more fluent. It made him speak more fluently. It is, at times, a good thing to challenge yourself. Try to talk about something you know little about. This assists you in learning new words and ideas. I once had a student who loved sports, but he decided to talk about science. It was difficult at first, but he eventually learned words and became more fluent in expressing different topics. Relaxation is also fluency. When relaxed, you speak more smoothly. I had one student who was tense when speaking. I told him to inhale deeply before speaking. This relaxed him, and his fluency improved. Fluency is also the practice of what you have learned. If you learned a word today, try practicing it tomorrow. I had one student who would learn one new word every day, and then construct a sentence using the word. This practice helped him remember the words and apply them spontaneously in speech. Another activity is to learn from what is available around you. You can sometimes learn English from signs, posters, and even menus. I had one student who liked exploring the city, listening to every English sign that he would encounter. He would read and try to understand it. This helped him learn new words and sentences that he could use in speech. It is also healthy to be fascinated with the culture of the language. English is spoken in many countries, and each country has its own way of speaking. I had a student who was fascinated with British English. He would watch British television and learn their culture. This helped him to know different ways of speaking, and he became fluent. Fluency is not just words. It is also body language. When you speak, your body language is part of the meaning of what you are saying. I had a student who was very good at body language. Even if he spoke with simple sentences, his body gestures made him seem more fluent. This improved how he communicated. At times, it is pleasant to test yourself. Try to talk about something that you do not know very well. In this way, you learn new terms and ideas. I once had a student who liked sports, but he preferred to talk about science. It was difficult initially, but with time, he learned new words and spoke more fluently when talking about things. Fluency also arises from calmness. When you are in a relaxed manner, your words flow better. I once had a student who was very tense when speaking. I asked him to breathe deeply before he could speak. This calmed him down and his fluency improved. Another habit is through questioning. When you question, you begin conversations. I had one student who was very good at questioning. He would question his peers regarding their day, their hobbies, and their interests. This made him more conversational because he was always conversing. You also need to reflect on your improvement. Once every 2 weeks, take time to reflect on how much you have improved. I had a student who maintained a journal. Every week, he would blog about his English learning progress. This made him aware of how far he had gone and motivated him to keep going. Flexibility is also fluency. Sometimes, you may need to change the way you say things so that it becomes easier to understand. I had a student who was excellent at this. If someone was unable to understand what he was saying, he would change his sentence until they could. This made him more fluent because he could adapt to situations. Another essential thing is staying in touch with other learners. When you are studying together, you can transfer your experience and learn from each other too. I had one student who was in an English club. Every week, she would meet with other students and try to practice their speaking. This kept her motivated and helped with her fluency. Setting small goals is also a good idea. Instead of telling yourself, "I want to be fluent," tell yourself, "I want to acquire 5 new words this week." I had one student who set weekly small goals. They were attainable, and every time she accomplished one, she gained confidence. These small goals eventually caught up with her, and she became better at her fluency. Fluency also involves being persistent. Regardless of how difficult it becomes, don't quit. I had a student who didn't do so well in English for a year. He had to give up so many times, but he just wouldn't quit. There was one time when he knew that he spoke more fluently than ever before. His persistence paid off. At times, you should review what you learned. Review lessons from the past and learn them again. I had one student who would review her notes monthly. She remembered the lessons that she learned in class, and she was more confident in utilizing the language. The other one is you must remain open-minded. Certain days, you have the opportunity to discover that there are other ways to say something. I once had a student who was interested in learning everything about different English dialects. He would learn how the people of different places used to speak. This made him more adaptive and efficient in different scenarios. Efficiency also comes from loving the language. Find something you like about English, such as a book, a movie, or a song. I once had a student who loved English poetry. She read poetry every day and tried to understand it. That made her more interested in the language and made her more fluent. It is also required that you ask for feedback. When you are speaking, have someone criticize you while you are speaking. I had a student who would always ask for feedback after talking. This helped him know where he could improve and what he was doing right. Feedback is one of the vital tools in getting more fluent. Another fluency strategy is flashcards. Place new words on flashcards and review them daily. I had a student who made flashcards for every new word he learned. He would question himself on a daily basis. This aided in remembering the words and making them a part of his dialogue. Fluency also means being comfortable with silence. At times, you must take a pause to think before you speak. I had a student who was afraid of silence. He believed he must talk immediately. I told him it is okay to pause and think. This comforted him, and he spoke more clearly. It is also helpful to study phrases instead of individual words. When you study a phrase, you learn the way words relate to each other. I had a student who focused on learning phrases. This made sentences more natural and fluent. Being curious about the world is also fluency. When you learn other cultures and ideas, you have more to talk about. I had one student who loved learning history. The road to fluency is not always smooth, but it's always worth it. Just as a river runs steadily to the sea, so too will your work carry you nearer to where you wish to be. Being proficient is not so much a question of speaking readily, but of reaching out to the world and offering them your own voice. Every word that you learn, every sentence that you utter, is a bridge to new knowledge and new friendships. So keep on learning, keep on speaking, and let your voice be heard. And now, my question to you: what drives you to keep along the path of fluency? I should like to hear your thoughts. Achieving fluency in English is a step-by-step learning process that requires patience, practice, and a positive mindset. So, start practicing today. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.